It's fall on ABC. All the kids are saying.
Cause CBS Saturday morning is smoking.
Saturday morning on Fox Kids.
Saturday morning cartoons. What was once a huge staple of American pop culture has now become a thing of the past. After a long week of school, there was nothing better than to sit in front of the TV, eat your sugary cereal, and watch some of the animated programming Big 3 networks, later 5, had to offer. Today, with the rise of streaming services like Netflix and Disney Plus, and television slowly dying, children can watch their favorite animated shows anytime they want. However, one of the pioneers of Saturday morning cartoons would arguably be the animation studio Hanna-Barbera. Founded by former MGM animators William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, these two men will create some of the most memorable cartoon characters of the 20th century for nearly 4 decades. Join me, 47 Cartoon Guy, as I go through the rich history of one of the most influential animation studios and the impact they made. So let's not waste any time, let's get started.
Yogi Bear is smarter than the average bear. Yogi Bear is always in the ranger's hair. The biggest show in town is Huckleberry Hound, for all you guys and gals. Scooby, Scooby-Doo, looking for you. Scooby-Doo-Doo, where are ya?
William Denby Hanna was born July 14, 1910 in Melrose, New Mexico. Later on, his family moved west to Los Angeles. Hanna was a shy outdoor enthusiast, and for many years he was an Eagle Scout, later being promoted to Scoutmaster as an adult. Hanna also had a love for music, which carried over to his animation career as he wrote many songs for some of their cartoons he helped create, like the Flintstones. Bill studied journalism and engineering at Compton Junior College, but he had to drop out due to the Great Depression and took a number of odd jobs. One of them was working with his father and other engineers of the construction of the Pantages Theater in Hollywood. It was there he learned about a new company that was headed by 2 men from Kansas City, Rudolph Ising and Hugh Harman, who had then recently parted with Walt Disney, who started his own studio. The two had been hired to create cartoons for Warner Brothers through Leon Schlesinger. Despite a lack of formal art training, Hanna applied for a job and was hired.
I started in the cartoon business in 1930 with Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising making the first Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies.
Hanna started as a custodian and cell washer, until eventually becoming head of the ink and paint department. Hanna enjoyed the company of his supervisors and sometimes stayed after hours to contribute songs and pitch gags, which were later used in some of the studio's Bosco cartoons. Hanna was able to convince Hugh to let him work on the timing of the cartoons as well. After a business disagreement with Schlesinger, Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising began producing cartoons independently for MGM in 1933, and Hanna followed them. He learned a lot from the two men, which came in handy when it was time to direct his first cartoon, To Spring. The short, which was co-directed by Paul Fennell, was about little gnomes who mine colorful crystals as they prepare for the springtime. After Rudolph and Ising's contract was up, the two left MGM, but Hanna stayed. MGM decided to open their own animation studio and was now under the leadership of former theater owner. The series was based on a comic strip called Captain and the Kids. Hanna was the director, along with Bob Allen and Friz Freleng, but the cartoons never took off with audiences, and the shorts were canceled. At the time, Freleng left MGM to go back to Schlesinger, and MGM rehired Rudolph and Ising.
And it was there that I met Joe.
Joseph Roland Barbera was born March 24, 1911, on the Lower East Side of New York. The son of Sicilian immigrant parents, Barbera grew up in New York City. He was suave, smooth, and a man of many talents, acting in school productions, editing his high school newspaper, and writing short stories. He was a skilled boxer, a career choice he turned down once he learned he had a passion for drawing. After school, he landed a job at the Irving Trust Bank and took several art classes at night at the Art Students League on 57th Street. Barbera submitted his cartoons to popular magazines in Manhattan, but after a string of rejections, his artworks was finally published at Collier's Weekly. Joe was one of the many moviegoers that was fascinated by the Disney Silly Symphony short, The Skeleton Dance. So much so that Barbera wrote to Walt Disney in California, and a future media mogul wrote back, promising he would look him up during his next trip to New York. Unfortunately, Walt never got back with Joe. Despite this, Joe still had an interest in animation and took a job at the studio of Max Fleischer's, but quit after 4 days. He gained a better position at Van Buren Studios, a small animation studio owned by RKO. Barbera was able to impress his boss with his ability to create cartoon gags and moved up to animator and storyman. Unfortunately, this would be a job he would lose due to the Great Depression. He then moved to Terry Toons, the studio that would later be known for Mighty Mouse, Heckle and Jekyll. Oh yeah, and this.
Somebody touch my spaghetti!
Joe worked as an animator, hoping to be more involved in the story process. In fact, he went to Paul Terry, founder of Terry Toons, to present a storyboard with an original character he created, a pilot named Dirty Doug. Paul wasn't impressed. Joe wasn't satisfied with his time at Terry Toons, so he quit after 7 months and moved to MGM. It was at MGM where Bill and Joe first met and hit it off right away. Out of boredom, they decided to come up with an idea of their own.
Pretty soon, we were sitting there in a room. He ended up in the room with me as storyman. So one time I said, why don't we do a cartoon of our own? Well, we're sitting here, you know. So we set the pattern for the way it was going to work out. Oh, we decided to do a cat and a mouse, which had been done 4,000 times before that. It was about as original as my foot, you know. Nevertheless, I wanted to do a cat and mouse because, number one, the minute you see a cat and mouse on the screen, you know there's conflict. And you got chase. And I loved that whole idea. So we designed a cat and a mouse.
On February 10th, 1940, Bill and Joe's creation, the animated short Puss Gets the Boot, was released to theaters. It featured a mouse named Jinx being harassed by a cat named Jasper. After breaking a vase during a chase, Jasper gets a strict warning by his owner, Mammy Two Shoes.
Now understand this, Jasper. If you breaks one more thing, you is going out. O-W-T out.
Yeah, we'll get to her later. Jumping at this opportunity, Jinx wastes no time making Jasper's life a living hell so he can get thrown out of the house. During production, the staff at MGM merely scoffed at the idea, especially Fred Quimby. But the short was a huge hit. He even got nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Short, only to lose to another MGM short, The Milky Way. Coincidentally enough, another short that was up for an Oscar that year was the very first defined Bugs Bunny cartoon, A Wild Hare, directed by future animation legend and friend of Bill's, Fred Tex Avery.
In the meantime, Quimby, in his wisdom, said, don't make any more of them. He says, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
And with that, Bill and Joe went off to make one-off cartoons, such as the incredibly racist Swing Social, The Goose Goes South, The Journey of a Little Goose Traveling South on Foot, Since He Can't Fly, Galloping Gals about fillies who are racers at the Kentucky Derby and the juicy gossip they tell each other, and Officer Pooch, about a canine officer trying to save a bunch of kittens. Quimby would change his mind about not making any more cat and mouse pictures due to popular demand, and gave Bill and Joe the go-ahead to continue their runaway hit. Starting with the next cartoon, The Midnight Snack, the cat and mouse duo was finally given their names, Tom and Jerry. It would go on to star in 114 cartoon shorts for MGM. Audiences fell in love with these characters. Despite being normally silent, both Tom and Jerry had a ton of personality in their designs, expressions, and animation. The two were so versatile they could be put into any situation and setting. Hanna-Barbera managed to keep the formula fresh by introducing new characters such as Spike the Bulldog, his son Tyke, a little duck who Jerry protects, a nephew of Jerry's named Nibbles, and a constant change of owners for Tom. I suppose I should also address the elephant in the room. While Tom and Jerry was and still one of the best cartoons of the golden age of animation that can now be considered bad taste, particularly the character Mammy Two Shoes. She was voiced by film and radio actress Lillian Randolph, who was known for playing maids at the time. The character speaks in a stereotypical manner.
Yes, sir, Thomas, you is a hero. Here's the reward for getting rid of that mouse.
It's uncomfortable to watch, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. And while I don't think it's nearly as offensive as what other studios were doing, the point still stands. Images like this are not okay. In the 60s, when the shorts aired on CBS Saturday mornings, Mamie was redrawn to be a thin white woman, and even sometimes recolored and dubbed over by June Foray. And in the 1990s, her voice was redubbed by actress Thea Vidal.
Thomas? Is that you sleeping?
While these hurtful images were wrong then and wrong today, removing them but pretending they didn't exist can be just as harmful. That's why many of these cartoons have been restored to their original form on DVD and Blu-ray for historical reasons. The shorts will become so popular they'll be nominated for 13 Academy Awards, but winning 7. Tom and Jerry also became pop culture icons. During this time they will appear in the advertisements, comics, even cameos, dancing with the likes of Gene Kelly and swimming with Esther Williams. Of course, Fred Quimby, who put down the idea at first, had no problem accepting the Oscar. As the shorts went on, the evolution of the characters would begin to change, not only in style, but in tone as well. The shorts became more violent, more energetic, and fast-paced. Hanna would then draw the entire storyboard, and once it was done, Hanna would take it, time the action on exposure sheets, and hand the scenes over to the animators. The animators included Carlo Vinci, Irv Spence, Ed Barge, Ken Muse, Ray Patterson, as well as a few others. Also, an office boy in MGM was a young man named Jack Nicholson. Yes, that Jack Nicholson. He was offered a job as an in-betweener, but he declined, and the rest, as they say, is history. And let's not forget those like series' most famous sound effect, Tom's blood-curdling scream, was provided by Bill Hanna himself. Scott Bradley's orchestrations also played a huge part in the short. Retirement of Fred Quimby, Bill and Joe were promoted to head of the MGM animation department, still working on Tom and Jerry shorts, as well as taking over Droopy cartoons. Little did they know, their tenure at MGM was about to come to an end.
Yes, you'll find this Westinghouse set so easy to enjoy. The smoothest operating television you can get today.
Television became commercially available in the mid-50s, and everyone was getting one. This meant bad news for theaters, which were losing revenue at the box office, and the studios were trying new gimmicks to get more butts in seats, such as 3D. That wasn't the only problem.
But Tom and Jerry was so successful that when we re-released cartoons that we did 4 years ago and brought them back and re-released them again, they did as well as new cartoons. So they said brilliantly, ho, we can save production of new cartoons by just re-releasing the cartoon. And in doing so, they would save maybe, I think the number they were talking about was $600,000 or $700,000 by not doing any new ones. Well, I tell you, here's 2 adults who thought they were sitting on top of the world suddenly find themselves out of work. But total quick, like with about 2 weeks' salary after 20 years, you know, that's all you got.
It was our belief that we would still be at MGM making Tom and Jerry cartoons today. And it didn't take long, though, until you could see that the handwriting was on the wall. And MGM, the cartoons that we were making, they were used, but you could see that television was making big inroads on the box office, the money. We felt that we could probably continue.
The Tom and Jerry shorts ended its run on 1958. Final cartoon Bill and Joe directed together, Tot Watchers, about Tom and Jerry trying to put a baby out of harm's way, as his neglectful babysitter is too preoccupied talking on the phone with one of her girlfriends. Yeah, not really one of their best shorts. Soon after, the MGM cartoon studio was closed down. 3 years later, MGM revived the cat and mouse duo for new shorts, directed by the late Czech animator Gene Deitch, and made by European animation studio Rembrandt Films. These shorts were often low budget, crude looking, and surreal, with weird sound design and mumbled dialogue.
Gene told me I think they got 3 Tom and Jerry's to look at. They sent them 3 prints. I don't know which ones they were. But that's what the animators had to study to learn to draw the characters. They didn't get any model sheets, no old drawings, nothing. Just send them 3 prints of old Tom and Jerry. Say, okay, this is enough for you.
This run didn't last long and ended in 1962, but for whatever reason, it would gain a cult following in recent years. In 1963, animator Chuck Jones, who was just let go for Warner Brothers, started Sib Tower 12 Productions. and created some new Tom and Jerry shorts. Chuck was not a fan of the original Tom and Jerry's, and had trouble adapting his own style into the series, which explains why they feel like pale imitations of his Roadrunner and Coyote cartoons. While Joe's cartoons were better received, his run with the characters ended in 1967, and he moved on to making television specials in a 1970 fantasy film, The Phantom Toll Booth. With the closing of the MGM animation department, Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera began contemplating on the idea of producing cartoons for television. After all, they have some experience. They were the ones responsible for the animation of the opening credits of the sitcom I Love Lucy. This was back when they were still under contract with MGM, and Fred Quimby was none the wiser. So in 1957, HB Enterprises opened its doors on a lot of Kling Studios, formerly Charlie Chaplin Studios. George Sidney, the director of Anchors Away, served as Bill and Joe's business partner. Most of their animators at MGM became the new staff of HB, along with conductor and composer Hoyt Curtin. Because there were massive layoffs in the animation industry, they were able to hire writers like Mike Maltese, Warren Foster, and animators like Tony Benedict, Willie Idle, and Alex Lovey. When Disney's Sleeping Beauty ended production, many of the animators who were just laid off migrated to HB Enterprises. With movie theaters shutting down their animation divisions, leaving many out of work, to these talented artists, Hanna-Barbera was more than an animation studio. It was a godsend. The lucky part of the whole disaster at MGM is they had to release the best group of animators all over the world, and we brought these people back to our studio. We had a ready-made army. We got the best story people from Leon Schlesinger and artists from Disney. We simply took on the most talented people from all over. Bill and Joe worked on presentations to pitch to distributors like MCA and 20th Century, who passed. One person that was interested was John H. Mitchell, Vice President of Screen Gems, a distributor of Columbia Pictures. John believed there was a place for cartoons among the many anthology series, sitcoms, and variety shows. Mitchell commissioned a 5-minute segment for bookends for theatrical cartoons. This would lead to the very first television show from Hanna and Barbera, The Rough and Ready Show, which debuted Saturday morning, December 14th, 1957 on NBC. And while it wasn't the first cartoon to ever air exclusively for television, it would be the beginning of the studio's long legacy. Before then, Saturday mornings for kids usually consisted of serials like The Lone Ranger, Rin Tin Tin, and Howdy Doody, and cartoons that did air were usually theatrical shorts rebroadcast for television. Rough and Ready revolved around the adventures of a dog and a cat who are best friends, as they have run-ins with many recurring villains. The show also had live-action segments hosted by Jimmy Blaine. It was also the first show from the studio that used a new innovative technique, limited animation. Since budgets for television were higher, fewer drawings were needed. The budget for a typical Tom and Jerry cartoon will be about $50,000, but at Screen Gems, they were given $2,700 for 5 minutes. To William Hanna, back at MGM, our budget was lavish enough to allow as many as 60 drawings per foot of fully animated film. It was a new ballgame for TV. In order to meet our budget for Rough and Ready, we had to pare the drawings down to no more than 1 or 2 per film. It was also decided that voice actors were needed to help balance out the noticeably cheaper animation. Unlike the silent Tom and Jerry, Rough and Ready would speak and would be performed by actors Dawes Butler, who had done several voices for MGM and Warner Brothers, and Don Messick, an announcer and former ventriloquist. The two would become Hanna-Barbera's longtime voice actors and will remain with the company until their respective deaths. Butler in 1988 and Messick in 1997. Dawes Butler will be best known for voicing Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, Elroy Jetson, Snagglepuss, Wally Gator, and countless others. While Don Messick's famous role will be Scooby-Doo, he would also be known for Boo Boo Bear, Ranger Smith, Bam Bear Rubble, Astro from the Jetsons, Dr. Benny Quest, Ricochet Rabbit, Adamant, Muttley, and many more. Other Hanna-Barbera voice actors would later include regulars John Stevenson, Julie Bennett, Howard Morris, Paul Frees, Jude Foray, Doug Young, Gene Vanderpool, and Janet Waldo. Even the man of 1,000 voices, Mel Blanc, will lend his voice to some of the studio's famous characters. Rough and Ready aired for 3 seasons on NBC and would later end its run in 1960. While the show was a moderate hit for Bill and Joe's new company, the best was yet to come.
mamá, yo quiero. Mamá, yo quiero, mamá. Dash a pepper, dash a pepper, dash a pepper sauce American way.
Mama, you quiero.
Mama,
Mama, you quiero.
mama,
Mama, you quiero. Mama, dash a pepper, dash a pepper.
Mama.
South America, you quiero, mama.